I can still see the candlelight dancing on the silver, reflecting a quiet, expensive war. My daughter, Sarah, sat across the mahogany table, radiating the kind of effortless confidence that only comes from being consistently told you are exceptional. She was beautiful, sharp, and entirely convinced of her own destiny. I, conversely, was just the wallpaper. She had brought her fiancé, Brad, and his father, Senator Vance, to my house for what she called the formal introduction. To her, this was a ceremonial farewell to my orbit. She was moving up, I was simply moving out of the way. I knew the senator was a snake, but a useful one. "Ignore my father," she instructed them, rolling her eyes with practiced theatrical disdain. "He's just a lazy retiree who watches TV all day. A man of quiet hobbies, I suppose." She paused, her voice dripping with amusement. "I'm the only one with actual drive in this family, the only one with ambition that doesn't fit on a fishing lure." She laughed, the sound brittle and high. "Honestly, Senator, I can't wait to change my last name and finally leave this house behind." I watched the senator. He wasn't smiling. He was sweating. Under the glow of the chandelier, his expensive silk tie looked like a noose. His eyes kept darting to me, not with respect, but with a pure, cold fear I recognized immediately. Fear of exposure. Fear of falling. My daughter, however, was too absorbed in mocking me to notice the panic gripping the man she was trying to impress. I am a retired man, yes, but I was never an accountant or a salesman. For 30 years, I worked in the shadows. I was the one who made problems disappear for powerful people, the politicians, the oil barons, the heads of state committees. I didn't deal in money, I dealt in leverage. I was the fixer. My retirement was not earned through leisure but through accumulated secrets, and one of the biggest secrets in the state belonged to Senator Vance. The senator's dark past, a series of ethical breaches, some very serious felonies, was currently resting in a locked metal file cabinet in my study. I had held on to it for 3 months. Why? Because Sarah had a very specific, expensive ambition, and the senator's son, Brad, was the fastest route to it. I had offered Vance the burial of those files, the guarantee of his political future, in exchange for a wedding. A simple transaction. Sarah got a title, Vance got to breathe. I watched Sarah toast the future, her hand resting possessively on Brad's forearm. She saw a dynasty. I saw a deal. And now, watching her use my character as a punchline to impress the beneficiary of that deal, the ledger in my mind snapped shut. The liability outweighed the asset. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, placed the glass down, and wiped my mouth with my linen napkin. The small sound cut through the noise of their conversation like a razor. I looked directly at the senator, ignoring the 2 young people entirely. "The deal is off," I said. The words were quiet, a low hum, but they landed with the force of a wrecking ball. The senator visibly deflated. Brad frowned, looking between us like a tennis spectator. Sarah, of course, lost her temper immediately. "You're embarrassing me, old man! Be quiet!" she shrieked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." That was her mistake. I had nothing but ideas. I stood up slowly. I had no need for theatrics. The senator knew exactly what had just happened. He was already running the risk assessment in his head. I ignored Sarah's continuous shouting, something about jealousy and spite. I walked out of the dining room and down the long, dark hallway that led to my study. The mahogany door shut behind me, muting her rage to a dull, insignificant buzz. I sat at the heavy desk, the one they both told me looked cheap, and opened the wall safe. The senator's file, thick and red, was sitting right on top. I picked up the secure line, the phone they thought was just for telemarketers. The connection went through in 2 rings. "District Attorney's Office?" a tired voice answered. "It's Mr. Sterling. I'm sending the files on Senator Vance, the one codenamed Copperhead. You'll find everything you need to open a full investigation." "The file we were told was impossible to obtain?" the DA asked, suddenly wide awake. "It was impossible," I corrected. "Until now." I hung up. The machinery of destruction is swift when you know how to operate the controls. Within the next 2 hours, the news broke. The senator was publicly served with subpoenas. The wedding was canceled by his lawyers to protect Brad's name. Brad, being a senator's son, knew exactly which ship was sinking, and he immediately blocked Sarah's number to save his own skin. She came home after midnight, not triumphant, but screaming. She burst into the study, mascara running, shaking with genuine, non-theatrical anguish. She threw a silver-framed photograph of the two of them, the engagement announcement, against the wall. "You ruined it," she wailed. "You ruined my life. You did this out of spite because you hate that I found happiness without you." She accused me of malice. She accused me of petty, vindictive rage. She accused me of everything but the truth. Necessity. I looked at the daughter I had protected for a quarter-century, the one who believed power and protection grew on trees. I walked to the study door, opened it, and walked out. I didn't look at her. I simply locked the door from the outside, trapping her inside the room with the file cabinet containing the remnants of the deal she had mocked. She wanted to disown her past? I simply stopped protecting her future. I left her locked in the study, with the dead phone line and the smell of fear that now clung to the expensive leather furniture. Her screaming subsided quickly. Sarah had always been loud, but she was never resilient. Her rage was fueled by expectation. The moment that expectation died, the fire went out, replaced by a cold, shocking silence. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room in my worn armchair, drinking a glass of cheap scotch. The television was on, muted. The chyron scrolling across the bottom of the screen confirmed the efficiency of my work. Senator Vance subpoenaed in federal corruption probe. The engagement announcement from yesterday was already archived history. Around dawn, I heard a quiet thud from the study. Not a violent sound, but the sound of something heavy falling. I knew she had found the core of the problem, the political world's ability to triage. Brad's family had cut her off completely to stop the contamination. Brad wasn't a heartbroken fiancé. He was a political asset, and she was toxic waste. When I finally unlocked the door late that morning, Sarah was gone. She hadn't smashed anything. She was too clinical for that. Instead, she had left a note taped to the desk. "You are a monster. You think this proves something? It proves you are a small, pathetic man who has to tear down success because you can't build it." I smoothed out the note. It was pure Sarah. Even in ruin, the narrative had to be about my moral failing, not her miscalculation. I was not insulted. When you spend 30 decades fixing the world's worst problems, you develop an immunity to self-pity and insults. The real fallout began midday. The phone started ringing. It was ringing on my regular line, the one she used to call me a lazy retiree. The first call was from a lawyer representing Senator Vance. He was not threatening, he was pleading. "Mr. Sterling, we need to know what you sent the DA. You have to understand, this information could undo decades of work, not just the senator's career, but the entire power structure that protected him," I finished, interrupting the stammering man. Yes, that was the point. Tell the senator he should have taught his son to choose a more respectful fiancé. I hung up. The next call was from my late wife's sister, Clara, who was Sarah's godmother. Clara immediately launched into a hysterical denunciation. "How could you do this? You ruined her chances. She was going to be a senator's wife. You were jealous. You always hated her happiness." "Clara," I said, my voice entirely flat, "I didn't ruin her chances. I simply enforced the consequences of her lack of respect. She was marrying a name, not a person. That arrangement requires silence. She provided noise." I hung up. I do not have the patience for collateral damage. That night, Sarah came back. She didn't call, she didn't knock. She used the emergency key under the potted plant, the key she was supposed to return years ago. I found her standing in the middle of the living room holding a glass of my best scotch, neat. The scotch was expensive, and she knew I rarely touched it. "I lost the house, Dad," she said, her voice heavy with self-pity. "Brad's mother is sending movers tomorrow for all my things. She said my instability is damaging their brand integrity." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You had instability," I pointed out. "You just financed it with someone else's future." She slammed the glass down on the coffee table. "No, I had ambition. You had a secret, and you used that secret. You used power to keep me small. You wanted me here, under your thumb, watching your stupid TV shows." "I wanted you to understand the cost of things, Sarah," I replied, standing up. "You only understood the price. You believed wealth was inherited. You believed titles were earned through charm. I spent years protecting you from the reality that power is earned through transactions, not speeches." "And what was this transaction, Dad?" she demanded, gesturing wildly around the room. "What did you get out of destroying me?" I looked at the wreckage of her ambition, the ruined engagement, the shamed senator, the lost house. The silence in my own home was absolute now. The noise had been ejected. "What I got," I said, my voice low and final, "was my house back." I left the living room. I didn't lock the door this time. I walked straight to my study. I opened the file cabinet and retrieved the red file on Senator Vance. It was empty now, the files resting in the DA's evidence room. I closed the cabinet. Sarah stood frozen in the living room. I don't know how long she stayed there. Only I know that when I looked out the window an hour later, the expensive sedan I had bought her for college was gone. She was driving away, alone, with nothing left but the truth I had finally forced her to confront. She wasn't a titan. She was just the daughter of the fixer. The silence in the house once Sarah left was deafening. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a home without conflict. It was the heavy vacuum left by an explosion. I had achieved my objective. Sarah was dislodged from her arrogance, and the senator was neutralized. But a fix, by its nature, never ends neatly. There are always ripples. The news was a constant drone. Senator Vance, once untouchable, was now a public spectacle, the focus of daily updates on his mounting legal troubles. His career was over, but the investigation was just beginning to scrape the surface of his network. My action had not just ruined a man, it had destabilized a substantial portion of the state's political infrastructure. A few days later, a strange thing happened. My doorbell rang, late in the evening. It wasn't Sarah. She wouldn't approach my home directly again. When I opened the door, a man I vaguely recognized, a junior operative from the DA's office, stood on my porch. He was shaking. "Mr. Sterling, you need to call the DA immediately. This file, it led to something bigger than we expected." "That was my intention," I stated. "No, sir, you don't understand," he whispered, glancing nervously at the street. "The Vance files contained encrypted data linking him to a much larger years-long scheme involving infrastructure contracts. It led us straight to the state governor's chief of staff. That man has now disappeared. We believe he took proprietary government data with him." I felt a slight, cold tremor of professional acknowledgement. My old skill hadn't rusted. Vance was a pawn. I had just exposed the whole chessboard. "And how is that my concern?" I asked the young operative. "The governor is panicking. The chief of staff knows where the bodies are buried. The state is worried he's going to leak everything to the press, or worse, a rival administration. They need him found, quietly, before the morning editions." The operative swallowed hard, staring at me with a look of desperate, almost worshipful terror. "The DA told me. He said if anyone in this state could locate a man who wants to disappear, it's you. He said you used to be the closer. He said to ask you to come in, unofficially." I looked at the young man, then at the muted television reporting on the Vance investigation. I had walked away from this life years ago. I had spent my retirement watching old films, pruning roses, and counting my carefully hidden wealth. I had only dipped back in to teach my daughter a lesson in humility. Now the state government was knocking on my door, desperate for the services of the fixer I used to be. "Tell the district attorney I'm retired," I said. "My business is concluded." The operative's face fell. "But sir, this is an emergency. This could mean a constitutional crisis for the state." I looked him straight in the eye. My emergency was my daughter's lack of perspective. That has been solved. I am done fixing things. I closed the door softly but firmly. I went back to my armchair. I hadn't wanted to re-enter this life, and I wouldn't. The consequences of my action were no longer my problem. They were the state's problem. They needed to learn, just as Sarah needed to learn, that protection is a transaction. And once the price is no longer paid, the shield drops. But the night was not over. Around 11 p.m., my security system chimed. An unauthorized entry attempt. Not through the front door, but the back, near the garage. I didn't panic. Panic is for amateurs. I moved with the practiced efficiency of a man who has anticipated this moment for decades. I walked to the hallway closet, opened the floor panel, and retrieved the one item that had never left my possession, a small, specialized satellite phone. I sat back down in the dark living room, watching the security monitor flicker. A shadow was moving near the perimeter fence. Someone was testing the defenses, someone professional. The DA's chief of staff would not be breaking into my house, he would be running. This was something else. This was a direct consequence of the exposure. Vance's associates, perhaps, people who didn't want the full network exposed and who knew exactly who had dropped the original dime. They didn't want me to talk, they wanted me to disappear. I flipped open the sat phone and dialed a sequence of numbers only known to 3 people left in the world. The call connected instantly. "It's Sterling," I said into the darkness. "I need a check on all active interests tied to Vance's infrastructure contracts. Find out who is losing the most money the fastest. And I need a protective response team activated. I have company." The response on the other end was a single, calm word: confirmed. My quiet retirement was officially over. I hadn't just exposed a senator. I had kicked over a very large, very angry hive, and now the bees were coming for the man who dared to fix the unfixable. I watched the security perimeter settle down. The threat was gone, scared off by a phantom problem I had engineered across town. The incident only confirmed one thing. My life as the fixer was not a past tense. It was a suspended sentence. The next morning, the doorbell rang. It was Sarah. She wasn't crying, and she wasn't asking for money. She was dressed impeccably, but in a severe, dark suit that wasn't about fashion. It was about armor. She held no box of old awards. I opened the door, and she pushed past me, walking straight into the living room. "You should have taught me that power was the ultimate commodity, not manners," she said, turning to face me. Her eyes were sharp, bright, and utterly ruthless. They held no pity, no regret. She was finally seeing the world the way I always had. "You didn't ruin my life, Dad," she continued, her voice level and strong. "You just proved you own a bigger table than the one I was sitting at. The senator is finished. Brad is tainted. But you are the one who walks away clean after bringing down the whole column. That's real power, the kind I always wanted." I waited, leaning against the doorframe. I recognized the look on her face. It wasn't the look of a scorned child. It was the look of a prospective apprentice. "The open hand is gone," she stated flatly. "I liquidated the assets this morning. I didn't waste the money. I cut the dead weight. Now I need the next thing, the real thing." "And what is that?" I asked. She took a step closer. I watched you work the system to save my engagement, and I watched you work it to destroy the senator. You didn't do it with speeches or fundraising. You did it with files and phone calls. I want in. I want the Rolodex. I want the contacts. You were the fixer. I want to be the legacy. That life is dangerous, Sarah, I warned her. It's cold and it is lonely. I retired for a reason. Loneliness is just leverage without witnesses, she countered, quoting something I had said years ago and immediately regretted. And danger is just an unpriced variable. You created this vacuum in the state. I want to be the one to fill it. You just need a silent partner, someone young and ambitious, who owes you absolutely everything. Her ambition was terrifying, not because it was evil, but because it was exactly like mine. She saw the chessboard and wanted to play, unburdened by conscience. I am not in that life anymore, I stated firmly. She smiled, a thin, chilling expression. Yes, you are. Yesterday, some anonymous heavy hitters came looking for you because of the senator's file. They'll be back. They won't stop until they know what other leverage you have. You need protection, and I need a career. It's a perfect match. I realized she hadn't come for an apology or forgiveness. She had come for a merger. I looked at the daughter who finally understood the cost of power, but still had no capacity for warmth. She was everything I had feared she would become if she ever stepped into my world. The answer is no, I said, closing the space between us. I burned the bridge to that life. I will not rebuild it for either of us. You deny me the only thing I'm actually good at? She demanded, rage finally cracking her composure. I deny you my future, I said. You wanted to leave this house behind, Sarah. Now you can. But you will not take my old life with you. I walked to the hallway closet. I pulled out my old floor panel, reached inside, and retrieved the specialized satellite phone and the last sealed emergency file I kept. Not the Vance file, but the insurance policy against the insurance policy. I looked at Sarah, who was watching me with desperate intensity. You can have the house, I told her, placing the keys on the desk. Sell it. Use the money. Start whatever new life you want. It's the only inheritance you get from the man who used to watch TV. She snatched the keys, confusion warring with greedy relief. I walked out the front door, leaving her standing alone in the living room with the keys to the kingdom she despised. I locked the gate behind me. I stopped being the father, the retiree, and the fixer. I simply became a man on the move, carrying only two things, my satellite phone and my final unburned file. I got into a hired car waiting down the street. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Sarah had the keys to the house she scorned, but she had lost the key to the one thing she truly wanted, her father's secrets. My fix was finally complete. I had forced her to leave my world, and in doing so, I had finally left it myself.